Thank you for stopping by Big Top Gaming. My name's Brian, and in this video we're coming back for another solo Warmachine battle report. And in this one it's a little more unique because I had pulled the Facebook groups for Legion of Everblight and Khador, and those people were voting on which list I was going to be playing next. So in the Legion of Everblight one, it was a really close one between Absylonia 2 and Callus 2, while Crissa 1 just kind of sat towards the bottom. And in the Khador Facebook group, it was an overwhelming result for Sorscha. I think once everything was said and done, she had 64 votes, and then the next one after that I think was Irusk 2, who held up 22 or something like that, and then Strakov 2 was keeping the bottom up with only a handful of votes. So I'll probably be doing more of those in the near future. It just kind of is a good way to get everybody involved, and then they can see what they want to from some of the things that I'll be working with. So let's jump into the list for Absylonia 2 in Ravens of War. Each pull was meant to build in a specific theme. So for the Legion 1, we're choosing Ravens of War, and that was really kind of what I had in my mind for Absylonia 2 and Callus 2 right away. The big choice between those is Primal Terrors and Ravens of War, mostly because you get access to Golab. And he's just a strong piece, brings a great animus for both of those warlocks. And from there, things get a little bit more strange in terms of how you build things. For Primal Terrors, the biggest benefit is getting free Hellmouths, in my opinion. That allows you to increase the battle group a little bit, or bring some techie solo pieces, or even bring in a unit if you wanted to. For Ravens of War with Absylonia, though, getting the reroll to go first I feel is a pretty big bonus, and getting access to Crayelix is nice as well because he's a very cheap solo, also cheap as in free as a requisition, and can do a lot of work for a list that doesn't have a lot of ways to deal with troops. So for the Absylonia list, I've brought 5 heavies with me, and that would be Golab, Proteus, Carnivean, a Scythean, and a Seraph for that great Slipstream animus. But the list also has a Shredder. That's being proxied as the Mekanoshredder. We have the rules for that, or at least the whatever version of the rules they've released right now. And then from there, it's just filling in with solos, because the Hellmouths do take away a lot of points from your ability to kind of tailor the list a little bit. So it was mostly just going into getting, once everything was said and done, I only had the 3 points to play with, and 3 Spell Martyrs are great. They're 1-point solos for flags in a list that doesn't have access to a ton of solos you want just running around for the sole purpose of running around. And Absylonia also likes having Spell Martyrs at her disposal so that she can get off Hex Bolts where needed, in case she can get a easy Alpha Hunter. For the Khador list, we're playing in Armored Core because first, with Sorscha 3, there's no reason to play her in anything else. Privateer Press has done a good job to see fit to that. But Irusk 2 and Strakov 2 have a lot of great tools that they bring to a Man of War list as well. And I am happy to get some table time with Sorscha 3 because I've kind of been salty towards her ever since her release. And I'm hoping that the games that I play in prep for this battle report, as well as the one that I actually play here, kind of opens my mind up to some of the things she can do, and make me look at her with a new perspective. But Sorscha is kind of your definition, or a definition, of combined arms in Warmachine. As long as you believe that combined arms is a healthy amount of jacks balanced with units as well. And with Sorscha's toolkit, the biggest one being the flank bonus for Man of War as a field marshal, you really want to have enough warjacks to get good use out of that, but have enough Man of War to make sure that you're not losing out on that ability or run out of bodies if they have to end up running as a screen. So we've brought 2 Kodiaks and Beast 09. The Kodiaks are here just because there's no real access to Pathfinder through Sorscha at all. So having innate Pathfinder helps them get to where they want to, and Beast 09 is quite a a good piece for her. It allows her to tank a shot if she's playing up further ahead. He has reach as well, so we're talking about an 11-inch threat when all of her buffs are applied. And for units, we're bringing a full boat of Manowar Shocktroopers along with a full boat of Manowar Demo Corps. I do bring 2 Forgeseers just to kind of ease the burden of focus on Sorscha, and then an Adjunct I feel is pretty appropriate for her for the same reason. And she has some spells that don't mind the extra 2 inches of range, and then the rest is just your standard solo support. We did only have enough requisition slots for 1 tanker, which is fine for this list. Mostly, it's just going to be running around as a contesting piece, especially in this game, where it's not going to get as much use out of its gun type. So Absylonia ended up winning the role to determine the turn order and everything and table sides, and I figured that it was better to have Abby set up second to put up the Hellmouths further, and given the fact that Sorscha doesn't have the greatest range amplification with this particular list, I figured it would be easier for the Absylonia list to jockey a strong position on the table, and Sorscha would take a bit to get there and probably would have very little chance at getting the alpha since the list is so slow. I mean, she's got Stoke the Flames, but the way that the Warjacks end up wanting to set themselves up, it's not like she's trying to get them as the first wave to go. With having flank Manowar as a field marshal, you kind of want the Manowar to get there first and then have the Warjacks kind of follow up. So Sorscha's got to move up as much as she can this turn with trying to respect all these Hellmouth tentacles because they are up quite far up the table. So it's just a tough thing to kind of work around. And you'll notice that I did forget to advance move my tanker. I had forgotten that they had ended up getting that rule in the theme. It's been a while since I've played any Armor Core stuff. A couple other things to talk about too. On Sorscha's side, we've got those 2 bog-like things. One is Burning Earth, or actually no, they're both corrosion or the acid pools. So I ended up getting a little creative and putting some corrosion tokens on those just to make that easier for me to recognize. And I did the same thing with that hill that's Burning Earth now. And that obstruction on Absylonia's side, I ended up needing one based on what the Crimsy app had put out for me, and I didn't have one handy, so I just grabbed a Archangel that was still in the box that I had on the shelf so that I could get another one out there. But Sorscha's goal here is just to kind of get up, like I said, get up as far as she can while respecting the Hellmouths. That tanker is going to try and at least be a contesting piece. You're also going to notice that I forgot to put the flags out, but those are going to come up later. Although I ended up playing my first turn like I was trying to respect those flags anyways, and I think when I switch sides, that's when I pick it out here. The Demo Corps have got a difficult choice on where they want to go here because those Hellmouths are very scary for them. The Manowar can tank some of the hits armor-wise to where they're not going to worry about it, but these Demo Corps don't have that luxury. So for the Absylonia side, as I had stated earlier, I am pretty much in control of how I want turn 1 to throw or to play out. The threat ranges on Sorscha's list are not that extreme to where I need to worry about a whole lot of things. I just need to respect the countercharge range on all the jacks because Sorscha did put up all 3 of the Warjacks have Stoke the Flames on them. So these Hellmouth tentacles are just kind of maneuvering around to where the Khador side's going to have to deal with them in some way, shape, or form, but it's not going to be easy since all of the models on Khador, they're quite expensive, so they don't have just these chaff things that can randomly go deal with things. I think the closest they get is like the Adjunct having a spray, but at POW 12 with Impervious Flesh, there's not really a good chance that they're going to be able to take down one of those Hellmouth tentacles with just shots. So unfortunately, I'm giving charge targets for the Man-O-War, but I'm at least positioned in a way to where they're not going to get that much more distance out of that charge as opposed to a run, I guess. But okay, yeah, I see. Now we got the flags out. I think they just like manifested because of my superb editing skills. But now I get to just make sure that I stay out of, again, the threat range on these heavies. And I'm also, you had seen me move up the Seraph quite a ways, but I really don't need to be that aggressive with this list. So I think at first it was the Seraph had put up Slipstream and charged, but I really don't need it. So I ended up just backing the Seraph up a little bit so that I could not have it hanging out there just for a Beast 09 to grab. Absylonia ends up slipstreaming to bring up the Scythean because he should be doing a lot of work there. And Proteus is also... This was one of the other reasons why I wanted Absylonia to have first crack at being able to pick second, is that the Man-O-War they're not terribly difficult to get rid of for something like a Scythean or a Carnivean, but with the armor values they get to between Iron Flesh and Shield Wall, things get a little like screwy with the dice. There might be some where I have to take 2 attacks to kill them, but with Proteus having Chain Weapon on his tentacle, he'll make pretty short work of them, so I wanted to make sure that I could control or that I could counter deploy Proteus across from those Man-O-War. But in general, I'm just setting up my solos to get into places where they need to. I think Crayelix is also more wanting to be across from the demo core because when he can just put out a ton of damage on ARM 16 models. So he's just, this way I can also by taking second, I get to deploy where I want. So I start my turn off doing a couple corrosion checks. I think it's just one right now, maybe 2. I think both Kodiaks are corroded, and I grabbed my handy dandy brutal damage dice. I had to give a quick shout out to another Wisconsin-based content producer. They mostly do things on Twitch, but then post their videos on YouTube later. So if you're interested in seeing some more games from the Wisconsin area, I guess, you can check them out if you haven't already. They're a pretty good group of guys, and I enjoy playing in their events and look forward to getting to see more of them once we can all go out and do fun things like play games together. But for this Sorscha turn, some things are really easy for me. Like I can position the tanker to make sure that it's not just going to get dragged around by the Hellmouth tentacle, but in retrospect, it probably doesn't matter if it did get drug around because then it would just mean that I'd be getting drug into the flag. But I think I'm better off just kind of hanging out and playing it safe over here. Not that he is going to be really set on taking out that tentacle, but my opponent is me. But the Absylonia list doesn't have a lot of pieces that can just kind of move out there and start chipping away at that. The Seraph's shots shouldn't be killing the strike tanker, so it's kind of like he's just going to exist there and try and contest most of the time. My Kodiak was positioned last turn to not end up taking weird charges from the Hellmouth tentacles, and when I look at how it got positioned, it's not really in a great place to do any active work either, based on where everything is, but the Absylonia list is able to really stay out of range of any real issues, or they're able to stay out of threat range of the Sorscha list without really giving up anything else. Like, I've got to start committing to this because Spread the Net is just one of those scenarios where if you don't start putting contesting pieces into places, the scenario can run away from you really fast. And Sorscha doesn't quite have the footprint to start and the mobility to run around and start kind of taking out things and contesting. You know, the list is slow, and based on how much the Legion list punches, some of those pieces could go away really fast. So I opt to start the turn off by just shield walling my Manowar up here, and the goal was to just kind of create a really tough brick for the Legion player to kind of chunk through, because I want Sorscha to be active in the game, but I don't want her to be put in danger. And I think having the 6 Manowar up there is probably the best way for me to do something like that. So I also choose to put vent steams down, or vent steam with the Kodiak, so I can get up another cloud, and that kind of is in base to base with the Manowar. It's really more so for blocking line of sight for the Hellmouth tentacles than anything, because they don't have line of sight, and I know most of the army on that side does, but it at least gives me the ability to kind of position Beast 09 in a way where he can get counter charges against something that comes in through that line, because I've got reach at least to where he ends up charging, which I believe is what that proxy base is down there for, and made sure to leave him, you know, in a decent amount of range to where, or no, the proxy base was for Proteus, that's right, because I wanted to make sure that I could keep Beast 09 away from Proteus, because he's probably the best suited to taking something out like that, because Proteus does have Bracer on it, and it's basically where it goes the whole time, because sitting at defense or armor 22 is a pretty big deal. But against POW 19, it's not such a problem. So Sorscha opts to feat here, and I know, again, that she's kind of got a lot of things stacked against her, because most of the Legion beasts can see through things or have eyeless sight, so they don't care about these clouds so much. But the Hellmouth tentacles, again, don't see through them. Crayelix doesn't see through them. Golab doesn't see through them. And Absylonia doesn't see through them. So that's, I kind of use it to the best of my ability, and I know that the penalty to hit isn't going to be really impactful, because the defense of the Manowar is pretty low, and the mat of the Legion beast is pretty decent. But anything I can get here, I will take, because I just need to kind of brace for having a bunch of stuff taken away from me, and then trying to figure out how to tease it all or tear it all apart after that, and try and collapse sides. Because, you know, when you're playing against a heavy war beast list like this, you know that you're going to lose a bunch of stuff when it connects with you, and it's going to feel really bad. But if for every one beast you take out from the opposing player, it hinders them quite a bit. I mean, we're only looking at 5 heavies here, and one of them is kind of more supporty than it is do work. So 4 real heavies, and then a caster that can get some pretty decent work done. At the top of the screen, you saw that my demo core is spreading out a bunch, just so that they can try and be impactful. Like, I know I have to deal with the Hellmouth tentacles up there, so I charge in and just spread out a bunch. And I have, I think I did the Bond of Brothers, I think is what his mini feat is called. It was Drago's mini feat on them, so that I could try and like spread some of the little Crayelix damage that might come around. And you can see me being pretty protective with my heavies. I do want to make sure that they can unpack later when Legion crashes in. So now on the Legion side, this is another one of these really interesting parts about playing against yourself, is that I had kind of put Acosta. No, that's the Signar dude. Atanas. I put Atanas where I did to, I believe I gave I don't remember what I did to, maybe it was the retaliatory strike, maybe is what I gave to the demo core. I can't quite remember what I did with him. but I put him there and put him behind the clouds because I was like, oh, the Hellmouth tentacles can't charge me. No big deal here. But then I had kind of forgot that I could just populate a tentacle out in front of him and not have to worry about the cloud so much. So I think one of the things that I take away from these kind of games, these solo games, is just to really slow down. Because, like, I understand both these lists. I play both these factions. At least I play Khador a lot, or quite regularly, but Legion not so much. It's just good to slow down and really make sure you've got your stuff together so that you don't make these weird mistakes that really cost you a lot. Because I think having that Hellmouth tentacle just rip Atanas out of there is not really great. So I had to backtrack a little bit here. I got a little bit ahead of myself. I moved the Spell Martyr up to the flag because I figure it's just going to grab me points for almost the whole game, because the Hellmouth tentacle is going to contest most of the time. But that strike tanker is really the only thing that can I guess the Greylord can deal with it, but the tankers could do something too. So it's just a confusion of activations that the Khador side's going to have to deal with. So Absylonia moves up and slipstreams out the Scythean, and that's another thing that I hadn't thought about on the Khador side, is I had positioned the Kodiak behind the forest so that and utilizing that terrain so that the Scythean couldn't see through that, because, you know, eyeless sight doesn't see through woods anymore. So when I had put Absylonia up and slipstream that Scythean over, it gave that beast a good line to the Kodiak. So now the Khador side's just going to lose a heavy when it really didn't need to, if it would have just positioned a little differently. And then that Scythean probably wouldn't have as much of an activation. So over here, the Proteus is just charging in, and I had put the widget down to see like how many of these shock troopers I could grab with the tentacle, and it's basically the whole bunch of them. And on the Khador side, it probably would have been better to space these out a little bit so that I would leave some behind for things like flank to happen. Also, Absylonia had feeded this turn. She wasn't able to grab anything with to get Alpha Hunter going, but it's not really a big deal here. I've got plenty of distance to get to where I need to in order to do the work I need to with my beasts. And the defense is pretty junky on them, so they don't really need any help hitting or anything like that. So we're just cracking down a bunch of damage on these shock troopers, and tentacle, the chain weapon on the tentacle is doing quite a bit of work, because even with Iron Flesh, they're only armor 19, and I believe that Proteus is going to be dice off 1 on most of these, if not dice damage. I can't remember. But we're just going back and forth, and this is one of the other unfortunate things about playing against yourself, is that having to mess around with War Room on 2 different lists, checking damage on what your beast is, and then clicking back over to the Khador side just to deal with the damage on them is just a little tedious. But if I played these more, I would probably not have as much of a problem here, because I think this is the first time I've played Proteus in Mark III. So that's something. But you can see we do a lot of damage to these shock troopers. I think right now there's only 2 troops left, and now they're out of shield wall because of the way that I chose to attack them, and that doesn't last very long. We only have 1 remaining, and then the unit attachment left over there. So Proteus has done quite a bit of damage, and sitting at armor 22, I think Proteus feels pretty safe in terms of his ability to tank like a Beast 09 charge or something like that. But we have that Kodiak over there too. So I do bring the Seraph in, and the Seraph's goal is to slipstream Proteus back a little bit to make the charge on that the Kodiak would have a little bit more difficult. And we're also rolling up shots to try and take out that last remaining shock trooper grunt, or I guess he's the leader now. But we won't be able to get into the unit or into the UA, the officer. We're just taking a bunch of big shots into the little guy. So we end up getting that one off at dice off 7. It was unlikely I think, for the Seraph to grab him, but it ended up working out just fine. And we still have that Hellmouth tentacle there that's kind of tying up the Kodiak, so there were no counter charges or anything like that that were going to happen off Stoke. And those two beasts are, for the most part, all right at the current time. So I'm not too worried about them. Like, Bracer on Proteus with Unyielding is a pretty big deal, even for someone who's got a POW 19 axe. Next up, I'm just kind of positioning a Spell Martyr just in case that Absylonia can get a really decent Alpha Hunter later. And it's a decent contesting piece behind that forest just in case, but I don't think there's going to be much of a problem with worrying about Khador ending up or rubber banding so much to where they end up starting to score the middle zone. So now the Scythean is going into that Kodiak that it was able to slipstream into seeing, and with as many initials as it's got, and the fact that I'm swinging at dice -1 for most of this, we don't have much of a problem taking out the Kodiak. It's whenever you put a Legion heavy with a strength buff into Khador heavy, you're usually not going to come out of it. Having 3 initials and 4 bot attacks after that is pretty harsh. And that last hit was a big one. And I actually think that the one hit that I think I have 2 Fury on him now for bot attacks, and then leave him on 1 for some bad dice, and then I'm just like, oh, fine, I'll kill it. There's no repair in the Sorscha list, so I didn't really have to take down the Kodiak, but I figured it was just better to get it gone because flank is still a thing, and that could hurt a little bit in the long run because Legion Beasts don't have the greatest armor value outside of Proteus. And then I think we ended up taking a shot into Acosta, or not. Why do I keep calling him Acosta? I think it's because I've been building Flames list and I keep seeing Acosta's name pop up, but it's Atanas. So we take one into Atanas, take out the Kodiak, so that middle area that the Kodiak was going to be utilized to kind of take out whatever was coming into the demo core is now not even an option anymore. So we got a Scythean in Sorscha's side of the table, and that's not a really great place to be. So we've got the Hellmouth tentacles going in on demo core, and I was thinking I'd just be able to pull them in and do some extra damage, but the Hellmouth tentacles end up rolling pretty high on their charges. I mean, they're looking at dice off 4, so it's not likely that they drop these guys in one shot, but they end up dropping 1, and then I pull the other one in to beat with the Hellmouth itself, and I think I come up just a little short on killing the demo core that I drag in. Yeah, just a bit short. So now I've got to figure out what to do with that because Golab's kind of engaged with it now, and I must have not put the retaliatory strike on these guys because they weren't taking their extra hits. It had to have been something else that Acosta or Atanas did. So now I've got to figure out how to deal with the demo core that's blocking Golab, because Golab should be able to take out some of these demo core as well. So I think the next thing that happens here is Crayelix aims and starts shooting into combat to try and grab this demo core, and that proves to be a little difficult also because with the Bond of Brothers, mini feet popped, and Drago being where he is, that demo core is close enough to start spreading out damage. But on the second shot for Crayelix, he ends up rolling high enough to do enough damage to where it's not an efficient thing to move that damage around between the unit. And then he pops off another shot, or his final shot, and does a big chunk of damage to one of the demo core that's far out on the side. So a good deal for him. Now Golab can kind of just go and do what he wants. But now I'm checking for the control range on Absylonia because I think the Carnivean can get to a place to where they can start punching a few of them. But now I've got the problem of figuring out where I would want the... I guess it's Golab here. I remember the Carnivean's going to play into this, but Golab's got 2 demo core, and I believe none of these are damaged. So we end up getting the first one on the first hit. So the dice over here are just like lighting up like crazy. On the second demo core, this shouldn't be too difficult for Golab to take care of. But the first damage roll ends up only doing 1 damage, which is fine enough because it just means that Golab can start getting that finisher die on there. And with the amount of fury available to Golab, it doesn't take long for him to peel through this demo core. And then that leaves me enough fury to lightning strike out of here and get Golab into a more versatile spot depending on where he needs to commit to on the table as the turns progress. And I've got this Carnivean that doesn't really have much of anything to do, but with flight I'm able to just walk up and stay within Absylonia's control range, and I keep kind of jiggling this Carnivean back and forth because I believe I can get both of the demo core with the spray, and I think I didn't put the spray template down because it was on the other side of the table, and I was just like, that looks like it's about right. So they end up taking, or the Carnivean ends up boosting to hit on these just because I really need to, I can't waste the shots if I'm going to hope to not deal with the demo core. And the first first hit gets through and completely takes out one of the demo core. Or no, it looks like some damage gets shuffled around a little bit. Based on what happened. Or no, that was just me marking boxes that I hadn't been marking. So the damage roll on the first one takes it out, and then the last damage roll I end up boosting and takes that demo core out. Like, it was really fortunate for the Carnivean to just kind of collapse that side with him and Golab kind of tag teaming over there. So things are not looking super great on the Khador side right now. End up moving the Forsaken up to pull Fury off of, I believe, the Carnivean, or it might have been Golab. I can't remember which one it was, because I think Golab has a better threshold. This will not be very easy to recover from. I've lost, or at least Sorscha's lost, like 70% of her army. Wasn't able to get any work out of the counter charges, and now is going to be staring at, 5 heavies coming at her list all at once. Now the Carnivean and Golab are going to have a hard time kind of catching up with the rest of the table because they are on the opposite side of it, but as long as they're scoring a zone and holding a flag, which the Spell Martyr up top is kind of running around for, it's going to be okay for them up there to just kind of sit around and do whatever. Also the Mekanoshredder, which had helped the Scythean charge in and become a little bit more focused or fury efficient, can just run into that zone too and score it all day long and not have to do anything else. So that's another way to use that piece, I guess. So Sorscha ends up allocating to fully-ish load the B-Stone and Kodiak. So I think my initial idea here was to have the Forgeseer that is right by that Man-O-War Kovnik in back to come over and top off B-Stone, and then the Forgeseer in the zone was going to be dealing with getting some focus on the Kodiak as well. But things kind of change as we go on here. But I want to make sure that Sorscha's got some focus available to her just so that we can do things like Wind Rush and maybe apply a gun if we need to, or Winter's Grasp. No, not Winter's Grasp. I can't remember what her new winter spell is, but that it's the one that stationaries them. So I think I've got the range to get B-Stone onto Proteus, and the Kodiak has a pretty good charge set for him on Proteus and the Seraph as well. But the first thing I opt to do is take Atanas' Standard Bearer and use it to charge the Hellmouth Tentacle that's engaging my Man-O-War Officer, because he's going to be the one that charges in there and gets flank going for all of the heavies that I want to unpack in here, because I figure if I can take down the Seraph and Proteus on this side, I think that there's a good way for me to rebound back into the game. So I think also now is a decent time to mention that my Beast 09 is an extreme juggernaut. It's kind of like the conversion that time forgot. I've been trying to work on it for like the last couple years, but I just do so many things with different armies that he just kind of like fell off my radar for a while. But so try not to pay too much attention to him, I guess. Also, another really important thing to note here is that this Sorscha list has a Hermit in it, but that Hermit is nowhere on the table. I'm finding with the Hermit itself, since I can take it in so many different armies, I'm not moving it from one bag or one section on the shelf to another. So it's almost like he needs to kind of exist in his own space where I can just randomly grab him and not forget him anywhere, or I just need to make a Khador one and a Legion one and just deal with it like that. But I end up putting the proxy base down here for the Kodiak, because I want to get the Man-O-War to engage both the Seraph and Proteus so that I can get Weapon Master or get the flank bonus with both of those jacks, depending on which beast they need to go on. And the officer's swinging a POW 15 axe instead of 14 like a normal shock trooper, so I was hoping to do a little bit of extra damage to Proteus over here. But I think we actually end up doing a little bit more damage with the gun than we do with the charge, which is strange. I don't know. It looks like I do 2 more extra boxes with the axe. So Proteus got some decent damage taken out of him, so it makes the Kodiak's job a little bit easier. The Forgeseer does come up and ends up throwing down an Empower on him just to fully load him up. And next is just kind of unpacking the Kodiak. Now I could have done the Beast 09 into Proteus first, just to make sure I get that extra 1 inch. But based on the positioning of the Kodiak, it would have been hard for the Kodiak to charge in the way I wanted to on the Seraph. And I think that he actually wouldn't have been able to fit whatsoever. So this is kind of the way that things have to go. And a POW 16 flank dude, well, Brian, that was dumb. So I should have rolled 4 dice there for damage, and that was unfortunate. Oh no, I didn't need to roll 4 dice damage because I didn't spend the 1 to focus to charge in. I just walked in. So that wasn't stupid. That was just me not remembering what I did. So maybe it would have been better to unpack Beast 09 first. I'm not sure. So the Kodiak ends up rolling like kind of middling with everything. There's some damage rolls that are great and some that aren't. But we're only POW 16, so this is like dice off 8 or something like that into Proteus when he's got Bracer and Unyielding going on. So we're not putting up a ton of damage here. But had the Hermit been in the list, Word of Ruin would have really helped out a lot here. I think so far we're like 4 or 5 damage swings in. And with just the boxes that Proteus has left, I think Word of Ruin would have taken out Proteus with just the Kodiak activation. Because if we would have had that for the Man-O-War Officer as well, it would have easily went down because he had 2 damage rolls that did damage each time. So Proteus would be totally gone. So now I need to figure out, with Proteus being still there, how to deal with this with Beast 09, because my hope was that I could just charge Beast 09 into the Seraph and get that gone, and that would put me put 2 heavies down on Abby, and then she's kind of hanging out in front of 2 Warjacks. So then Golab and the Carnivean have to double back in a not aggressive fashion, like they can't charge to get to where they need to because Absylonia is going to be under threat from those Warjacks. So Sorscha goes up and she tries to be a hero and takes a boosted shot into Proteus. I think I end up wind rushing to get here so that I can aim. Maybe I'm wrong. And I do hit, so that was good. And for the damage roll, it comes up and only does 1 damage because it's like dice off 9 or something like that. It's ridiculous. So nothing going on there. I've only got 2 focus on Beast 09 right now because I realized that Scythean is close enough to charge in to Sorscha, and I need to find a way to stop him from getting there. And I think the Man-O-War Kovnik activation had to be used to give, it was either the standard bearer or the officer +2 speed to make sure they could make the charge that they were setting themselves up for. So I couldn't use the Man-O-War Kovnik to kind of body block. So next up, I think I use one of the focus to, no, we're still on Sorscha's activation. So I spend the 2 to Wind Rush, and I can't Wind Rush too far because I would be blocking Beast 09. So I've got to Wind Rush to just get as far away from the Scythean as I can and just get that +2 bonus to my defense, which isn't saying much, I guess. So we go in on Proteus with Beast 09, and this is another dumb one because I should have had an extra die. So I left Proteus on 1, and he should be dead with the charge attack. So that's another failure on my part. But now Proteus is finally dead, and Beast 09 spent his whole stack to do it, and that Seraph is sitting there just healthy and happy. One of the Absylonia mistakes last turn was the Forsaken cleared off Proteus's Fury, and it probably should have been the Seraph, knowing that Proteus was going to be like priority number 1 to kill. So that way now I haven't really gained any Fury management out of that, and now there's Absylonia is still going to have to reave a bunch of Fury this turn. So I think we take 1 shot into the Seraph. I think maybe I had 1 focus hanging around on Beast 09 and he was able to do some damage, but in areas where it wasn't really. Oh no, that wasn't the Seraph. That was the Forgeseer. So I had to body block the Scythean, and the Forgeseer was the only piece that I had left available that could really do it. I think the Greylord Adjunct wouldn't have been fine, but you can trample over that, and that's still gonna do a lot of damage to Sorscha, even though they'll be losing an attack. The Strike Tanker decides to try to get rid of the Hellmouth Tentacle because Absylonia went up 2 points last turn and contested me. So it was 2 to 1. Sorscha's got her back up against the wall now because she did score 1 point in the bottom zone, but Absylonia still scored the flag and her square zone, so now it's 4 to 1. Honestly, if I just put something into, or if I spawn a tentacle into the Sorscha zone, then I can just end Absylonia's turn, and then that'll be the end of the game at 6 to 1, and even make it 7 to 1 by just running the Spell Martyr that I have onto the flag over there. But I decide to play the turnout like normal and try to go for the fancy win. And Absylonia's got a bunch of guys frenzying because of the whole Proteus issue. So I think the models that I choose to have frenzy are the Mekanoshredder and I believe the Carnivean. So the Carnivean ends up charging into Crayelix, connects, and I think even with only 2 dice on that and rolling low, Crayelix just gets pasted by that Carnivean. So that's one thing I don't have. Not like it matters because, like I said, the game's basically over. Next up, I ended up pulling all the Fury from the Scythean because that's going to be the piece that I try to use to get Sorscha, and now I just have to figure out how to deal with the Forgeseer that's hanging out around the Scythean. So Absylonia is hoping to get Alpha Hunter off here by taking care of the Man-O-War officer that was getting the flank bonus set up, which she ends up doing just fine. So now I can get free charges and my +2 to hit. I think she ends up trying to throw a Hex Bolt at Sorscha and ends up connecting, and we're boosting for damage just to get some extra business on her, and we don't do a ton. I think we actually do 0 damage here, or 1 damage maybe. It might be 0. I think Sorscha sits at armor 18, so that dice roll wasn't really all that high. So we're not engaged with Beast 09 at all, and he wasn't able to countercharge or anything. And here's where I think I got a little cheaty because I wasn't reading the rule on the card as I was doing it. I was like, oh, I can just put up Slipstream, and then once I reposition, I can move Golab around. So I think I'm trying to figure out how to deal with this Forgeseer problem, and maybe I jumped the gun in explaining my cheaty nature, but I was like, okay, the Forgeseer, I can't see it, so Golab doesn't have the distance. I mean, I can move up there, but there's not enough room for me to move and have melee range to him. So this is when I get the bright idea to break the game and put up Slipstream and reposition or do I do Lightning Strike is what I did with her. So I did like Lightning Strike to move and then Slipstream. I think I've just completely busted this turn. Like whatever happened here was not a thing that should really ever happen. So all things considered, I probably can't get the assassination on Sorscha, but Absylonia still takes it with the scenario either way. But if you're trying to learn how to play Warmachine, what I just did was completely wrong. So Golab does get the Forgeseer. It's not really hard for him to do that. The Forgeseer's got a pretty low armor value compared to Golab's output. I mean, we're looking at 14 and 13 and then Weapon Master for damaged models, so it doesn't take a whole lot to make that happen. So I go for the glory play and take the flag, because why not win more if you can? Especially when you're just cheating to beat yourself. It's so depressing. So now I think I'm just gearing up for the charge with the Scythean and making sure that Absylonia's got the ability to stay where she's at and keep him in control. And I don't want to take a free strike from this Man-O-War Kovnik. So we end up charging through without passing through the 1-inch line on that one. And we end up getting on Sorscha. With Murderous and her having such a low defense, it doesn't take much to hit her, and we're looking at dice -1 on all of these Talon hits. So I think when everything's said and done, it only takes like 3 hits to bring her down. So I think I'm getting a little bit better at playing against myself. I know that as I play lists more regularly, I think things will get better too, because I won't be doing things like cheating with Absylonia to cast a bunch of Animi and Slipstream at the wrong time. But I do have a little bit more respect for Sorscha 3. I'm still a little bit down on her because she doesn't really do what I want her to do, and the feat is just really not what I like. I mean, I just don't like cloud feats in general, but I look forward to trying her out more. I'm looking forward to playing Legion more once their CID ends up coming around, but I think this Absylonia list is really going to stay the same. I don't know how I'll feel about her in Primal Terrors having like more access to other tools in that list, but having the reroll to go first and the access to Crayelix is a little bit more valuable than what I think I first realized. So if you have any comments on the lists, feel free to post them in the comments below. Otherwise, I look forward to making the next one of these for you, which there definitely will be. I think the next one, it should have flames in a variety. I might even have a Signar list to unpack. Who knows? I'm not sure what I'm doing next, but it will be out next week, like it seems as usual. So thanks for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.